On this week's episode, we have Danny-David Linaham. Danny is the hitting coach at Texas State University. This is his first year in 2025. This upcoming season will be his first full season at Texas State. Previously, he was in the major leagues as a coach in the Minnesota Twins organization, helping with game planning, working with a lot of the hitters. So this episode, Danny talks about his experience working with some of the best hitters in the world, and then how he's going to go about taking all of that knowledge and experience and making it applicable for his college hitters. Danny's one of the best hitting coaches that I know, so if you're into hitting, you're going to love this episode. As a reminder, if you love this podcast and if you love learning like I do, hit the subscribe button, because every single podcast that I put out going forward is going to be released here on YouTube. So I'm going to have all video for all podcasts going forward. So hit the subscribe button if you like watching it on YouTube. Here we go with Danny-David Linaham. All right, Danny, welcome to the podcast, man.
Patrick, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So this is going to be your first year at Texas State. You're the hitting coach there. You've been at several other stops, which we'll get to. I did read that you finished your college playing career in 2019, and then right in 2019 you got into coaching right away. So were you somebody you knew right out of the gate, like even as a player, that you wanted to get into coaching?
Absolutely. It was something, even in junior college, kind of got the idea after my freshman year, got banged up, and the sinkers had a little more sink than it did in high school, and immediately started getting my eyes on coaching. And yeah, I kind of positioned myself as a player to figure out how to coach after junior college. I went and played Division II, and that was a big part of the recruiting pitch is, can I GA after I finished playing? So yeah, right away I knew I was going to coach.
And did you have preference, college game, pro game, or did it not even matter to you?
Growing up, I'd always watch the College World Series. We'd turn on the Rangers game every now and then, growing up in Dallas, Fort Worth. But yeah, really college is what I zoomed in on, and didn't have any connections, not coming from a family of coaches or anything like that. So just tried to figure out where to go from there.
Biggest takeaway from you being in the major leagues with the Minnesota Twins, like what's something that, because I think, when you work with some of the best hitters in the world, it does change how you, or at least it can change how you view hitting and how you work with hitters at all levels, not just, when you start working with college hitters again, or, high school, whatever. What are some things that stood out to you? Um, I'll go first, just because, not to put you on the spot right away, just to give you an example. But to me, the biggest thing that stood out is like these guys have just as much fear and are just as afraid of failing and have those same emotions as a 14-year-old kid worried about making the high school team. They're just way more athletic and way more talented. But what are some of the things that you took away?
No doubt. And you alluded earlier, I finished playing in 2019, and I went into my first major league spring training in 2023 with the Twins. And they told me right away, hey, you're going to be in charge of run production efforts. So that's game planning, it's assisting and hitting, being in the cages and all those things. So day one of spring training, you're standing right in front of Carlos Correa and Byron Buxton and Max Kepler, and you're trying to figure out what you're going to tell them. And fortunately, I was a young guy in that environment and was the greenest guy in the room a lot, surrounded by really good people. Some of the best advice I got was players really just care about two things. It's do you care about them, and can you make them better? And so you're not going to win the World Series on day one of spring training, but in that moment, I think I really started to realize with major league players is they're just so attentive to everything. They're the best evaluators in the world of themselves, of the environment they're in, people they're around. So if you're filling them full of stuff that's not going to make them better, they're probably going to tune you out really fast. If you have things that they believe can make them better, right then and there, then they're probably going to listen and be really open-minded. So I think, to answer your question directly, it was their ability to feel out the environment, and then not be ashamed to take it from a 25-year-old kid at that point in time, or from a guy that played for 40 years in the big leagues. The information is the information, and I feel like those guys were just incredible at feeling out the situation and taking information from everywhere.
What are some of the things that they wanted? Like what types of a piece of information that you gave them that they felt was helpful?
Yeah, I didn't have any magic answers, but I think a lot of it was the role I was in, trying to bridge a lot of the data, the analytics, and apply it into, what they can take into the box. So that was something I really tried to be in the cage as much as I could, in front of those guys and make it baseball and not just, about a computer. Because at the end of the day, too, the other team has computers themselves. So I think things like ball flight data, whether it's pitch metrics, batted ball things, the list goes on and on. You know yourself being in Baltimore, but I think some information that we got into was, how do you bridge what they're doing with their body swing wise, and then apply that into the approach side of things and go hit guys like Tyler Glasnow and Kevin Gausman, team's aces. So I think really just trying to tie in, our mentality was to be 9-on-1, meaning we're taking our entire offense, competing against one pitcher, but within that 9-on-1, there's consistent one-on-one matchups along the way. So I think you're trying to figure out how each guy's swing works, number one. That's the self-awareness piece, and then how they're going to combat. And we don't even like to use that term; it's a little defensive. But how are they going to go attack some of the best in the game?
Mm, love that. I love that. So now you're at Texas State. We'll talk a little bit about kind of what you're doing now. So you're not in professional baseball anymore. Why'd you want to get back into college baseball? Texas State, first of all, before we even get into that, I didn't really know much about Texas State until I knew you went there. Honestly, that's the first time I even really heard of Texas State, and so I looked it up and doing research for this podcast. I'll be honest, dude. It's this pretty sweet place. The location's really nice. It's the facilities are sweet. Like I was watching, there was a video you guys did. Locker room's really great. Obviously, you're there now, so from a hitting standpoint, the hitters are in good hands. But what drew you back to the college game after? I mean, you're living the big league lifestyle.
For sure, for sure. And it wasn't the easiest decision in the world, if I'm being completely honest. But like I told you earlier, I always had an affinity for college baseball growing up. I didn't have Major League Baseball on the TV all that much. We had it on some, especially because when I was in high school, the Rangers were making their runs to the World Series, playing the Cardinals, still getting flashbacks of that. But as far as getting back in the college game, I think there's a lot of similarities in the sense of when you're at the major league level, it's all about how do we win tonight? Like, what can we do to figure out how to put one in the W column? And then as soon as that game's over, good, bad, or ugly, the next thought is how do we win tomorrow? And I think college baseball, especially at the Division I level, has that aspect too. And I think you can take it another step further. One of the best things about Major League Baseball is October baseball, playing the postseason. I think every game matters at the Major League level. There's no doubt about it, but I think it's unavoidable that the games play differently in May than it is in October because you're not worried about the long term. You're not in a full rotation. Once it gets to October, it's all hands on deck. You're throwing everything you can at that game to get through it and win it and put yourself in the best position. And then college baseball, you get to live that for an entire season. Things like RPI rankings. You're constantly trying to position yourself to get into the postseason, and then once you're there, it's not like you're playing the game completely different. Sure, you play a series and then you get into a tournament format, but every out truly matters. I know that's a little coach speak, but you definitely have that on steroids a little bit in the college game.
What was your process for when you started at Texas State? Because let's say, you come in, you're now the hitting coach, and you have all these hitters. You don't really know much about them. I mean, you have the stats maybe from last year. Did you have a process, or was it kind of just let me feel it out type of a thing as the fall goes on? Like, what was your method for kind of just onboarding yourself into the situation?
Good question. Now that the fall's over, we're kind of in that evaluation state. So I'm trying to think back to what that process really was. Because when you're in it, I'd tell you there wasn't really anything in particular we're trying to accomplish other than just building the relationships and the trust with players and staff too. Obviously stepping from a major league dugout into our dugout, there's an element of that. But I just wanted those guys to know that I'm a human too. I don't have any magic answers coming from that dugout. The game's still the game. But I'd say early on, it was a lot of video work before I got in, trying to just watch guys swings, and I was trying to build a library of just thoughts and notes on each individual guy so I could be as prepared as possible for the times when I did get there in person and got down here on campus, um, to talk to those guys and have some familiarity. But I'll tell you, it happened fast. This Christmas break, it's been really good to get a breather. I think my wife appreciates it too. Going from 162 game season plus spring training. Unfortunately, we weren't in the postseason, but it was pretty much in the season. Contracts up, and then we plugged right into the fall, which is huge for development, especially with hitters. So we try to get here as quick as possible and get that ball rolling.
What are some of the things that you're watching on video? You said you were watching video of some guys, taking some notes, writing some things down. Is there anything specific that you were looking for when you're watching your guys on video?
There's technical pieces, and tried not to get too in depth before the relationship was built because I think you gotta, the most important thing is getting to know them first and how they think and how they learn and process and communicate and what their language is. So try to pride myself on not teaching the swing in any particular way, but having a little bit of knowledge in every area of what each guru's philosophy is, and that way, once you do learn their language, you kind of know where their thoughts are stemming from. So the notes and what I was looking for, try to keep it really simple. Mainly for me, what I was watching was alignment, meaning uh, their feet, starting there, like the distance between their feet, how wide is the stride, is it open, is it closed? Then you kind of work up the chain with alignment, like which way is the pelvis oriented, how much counter rotation does the upper half get, and you can go all the way down the line there, but then the next piece was just posture. How much flexion is there in the trunk? How much of a hip hinge are they able to accomplish, and then bat path. So those are the main three. And again, not to go in there with a red pen and try to create an answer key for every guy of this is what you need to do, but just trying to just load my gun, so to say, so that when I got on campus and there was a shot to take with a guy where they opened the door to talk swing, I was prepared and loaded and ready to go.
You mentioned that you're also trying to build those relationships with the other coaches because they're getting to know you too, and looking at the coaching staff, there's a lot of experience on there for sure. What are some of the things that you've learned so far from just being around some of those other coaches on the staff? Because I'm sure, and I've never coached in college, so I can only imagine. But I'm sure there's different pieces, and just having friends who are now coaches in college, there's different elements of the game that's like, maybe that won't work here. Whereas, you have the time for it to work in professional baseball because time is on your side. Time is not on your side as much in college. But is there anything else that stood out to you that maybe you picked up on or have learned so far from the experience of the other coaches on your staff?
You bet. Well, it starts at the top with our head coach, Steven Trout, who I was talking to him about the job. I mean, you could feel his energy through the phone, and you could feel, how much this program means to him. He's been here for a number of years, and he's also been an offensive-minded guy. So that was something where we had extensive conversations beforehand. As this isn't an offense that was in a bad state. They've had really good years. They've had an identity that they've formed. They've recruited to it with our recruiting coordinator, Josh Blakely, who I think is one of the best in the country. So, just learning from them the history of the program, one, not just the school itself, but also, what's the offense looked like over the past 5 years, and what's the type of hitters that we've gone after, and what's the talent looked like. But like you said, there's more to it than maybe the professional game. We have time restrictions weekly. You get into your 20-hour a week period, you have your individual period. So I really try to pick their brain on how to maximize time, and space. And, we have a lot of hands that are here to help as far as managers and operations personnel and assistant coaches. But compared to the professional game, you could have, five hitting coaches looking at one hitter in a cage, and it feels like you're doing surgery. So, yeah, I think definitely coming here, trying to bounce ideas off of them on how to manage time and space. Um, but I think a lot of that there is similarity to the professional game where you're trying to think with the end in mind always. It's not the best conditions all the time in professional baseball. You may have one cage when you're on the road. You may have not enough baseballs. You may not have all the tools that you would in your home dugout. So fortunately for us in the fall, we spend our entire time at home in our facilities where we can get really creative with how we create space and how we train and all those things. So there was a little bit of learning as far as the rules and what the time restrictions are and where we can go and what we can do. But I think as far as strategies to develop hitters, I think there's actually systems in place that we can implement here to accelerate development, maybe even more than the professional game.
If I'm a player listening to this, and because I'm sure this is going to happen, where it's like, let's say Texas State's recruiting me, or interested in me, and then I have Power Four programs that are interested in me too. Why would I want to go to Texas State if I'm a hitter?
Sure. Well, I think number one, we play in a pretty offensive park, so that always helps. But we're in a really good league, Sun Belt Conference. Usually multiple teams are going to be in the postseason there, so you're going to have a chance to win, which I think is a big part of development too. The longer you play, the more opportunities you have to be seen. And if you're being scouted, it's different if you're in a league that's maybe not to the caliber of the Sun Belt. I think the pitching is really good, so you're gonna have a chance to compete against some really good arms. But then, once you're in San Marcos here, we've got top-notch facilities. We've got a really good campus. We've got people in every area from strength and conditioning, from our medical group, from our head coach who's offensive minded, like our recruiting coordinator. He's got a junior college background. He's got a high school background. He's seen a lot of hitters come through here. And then myself bringing some professional experience. And I didn't even get to Coach Pierce, who's coming from the University of Texas and has been to Omaha several times, and he's won everywhere he's been, and he's had a lot of high caliber professional hitters himself. So I think we have a lot of different perspectives that we can bring in. I think we have, a variety of ways to look at it. I don't think we're a group that is trying to get one type of hitter and teach one type of swing. I think we want to go get the most talented hitter and meet him where he's at and grow him within his skill set. So yeah, I think as far as, hitters that are going to come here, uh, there's a fine line between urgency and panic. I think you can probably attest to that being in a professional dugout. I think it's urgent here every day, and you can feel that, and it starts from the top. And as far as development goes, like we're not gonna let a day go by, let a drill go by, let a swing go by, that we're not looking to move the needle forward.
You mentioned earlier that there's a specific type of hitter that you guys are you may be looking for, and it sounds like if it's a hitter's park, are you going to be more prone to work like looking for a guy who has some juice in his bat? Because I think that's a big thing of in college baseball that a lot of people don't talk about is college coaches, a lot of times they're going to recruit to their home park, and then they also have different tendencies. They have recency bias, of this player looked like this former player who ended up working out, and so I'm more likely to go to that player. Now, whether they, consciously realize that, or not, that's another thing. But so is there a specific type of hitter in that regard that you guys are looking for?
I think the great thing here is it's not a pigeonhole park to where it's, a short porch to right where lefties would be really good here or really short to left where righties would play good. I think it's offensive all the way around, depending on the day. I think it plays well to the gaps for guys that can hit doubles and create bases in that way. And I think if the day is right to left and right field, it can fly and balls can leave the yard. So I don't think we're a place where handedness necessarily. We're trying to stack up that way, but I think we're looking for guys that can create bases in multiple ways because this park is going to reward a guy who can hit doubles. Uh, on Friday and on Saturday, it may be howling out of here, and we need guys that can really get in the air and drive it out of the ballpark. So I think we're looking for a variety. I don't think it's just one type, but really, there's a lot of ways to be offensive here.
And then you guys are pretty close to San Antonio, aren't you?
We are. We're just north. We're situated between San Antonio and Austin on I-35. So I actually live south of campus, a little closer to San Antonio. But when we're flying to go play in conference or a non-conference series, we're split. Sometimes we'll fly out of Austin, sometimes we'll fly out of San Antonio, and we can get there in and pretty much nothing flat. So we're pretty
Which
well
which
covered.
which do you prefer, San Antonio or Austin?
I haven't done it with the team yet, but I've flown out of both personally.
Yeah.
I like the Austin airport. It's a little smaller. It's been a little bit since I've been there, so it may be crowded now. The Austin area is booming, but both are good.
All right, let's talk a little bit about like the actual school itself, Texas State. What are your thoughts so far? It's a place I need to get down there. I do want to check it out. Come check you guys out this season. But what's the campus like? I mean, what's the layout? Is it pretty spread out or is it, pretty compact? Like, how's that going?
Yeah, campus is great. I mean, it's one of those schools that if you're playing baseball or if you're not, it's a great college experience. The
Mhm.
student population's pretty large, 30, 40,000. Like I said, between Austin and San Antonio. So you don't have to go either of those places. A lot of people stay right here in San Marcos, and there's a river that runs through campus. It's got a natural spring. It's 72 degrees year round. So it's not foreign to see students floating down the river on an inner tube during class or even getting from class to class. So, yeah, there's a lot of things to do outside. We have the weather, the campus. It's big enough, but it's developed on the inside in a way that has a lot of trees. It's got the river, obviously, but everybody's outside, which is nice, and everything's pretty close. It's not like you're going, 2 miles off campus to the baseball field. Our field's on campus, and the football stadium's right there, and all of athletics is right there. And I think that's one thing looking at the rosters over the years. This isn't a place, even in the transfer portal era, that there's been huge roster turnover. I think people come here and they really enjoy going to school here. So even if there is a situation where players finish and they still need a semester to graduate or they're going to go into grad school, a lot of them in the past, from what I've learned, have really stayed here just because they enjoy the college experience. And that was a pride piece a little bit for me too, is that both my mom and dad went to school here,
Mm.
and they're from the San Antonio area. And yeah, they attended what was then Southwest Texas State. And then in 2013, the school went from Southwest Texas to Texas State. So a
Didn't
little
even know
history
that.
for you.
Didn't know that. So when Paul Goldschmidt was there, it was Southwest Texas State.
Yeah, I think officially 2013 was the year that it became Texas State. They might have been calling it Texas State before that. So, yeah, when Goldie was around, I'm fairly positive it was Texas State at that point in time.
From a hitting standpoint, this upcoming season, I feel like there's hitting coaches have different things that they want to like emphasize with their players, whether it be swing decisions, whether it be timing, whether it be, confidence, whatever it is in the box. Like, is there something that you're constantly instilling in your hitters? Because I think more times than not, at least for me, I feel like a lot of hitters need to be reminded of things more than necessarily need to be taught new things. So is there anything that sticks out to you there that you're specifically going to emphasize to them this year or already have?
Sure, I agree with you 100%. I think that's one of the areas where coming from the dugout in Minnesota to here can be really impactful, because just watching those guys, I feel like I learned more from the players maybe than they did from me at times. And I think, as the Brady saying goes, like being obsessed with execution, making execution boring. I think that's what major league players are doing on a night in and night out basis. They're great because they're good a lot, right? So I think a lot of that is self-awareness. So we try to bucket, key indicators of what an elite hitter is, and you alluded to some of them. And you just design an entire course around swing decisions, which is one of those indicators. So shameless plug for you there.
Thank you.
But we definitely look at swing decisions as an area that that's just an identifier. Good or bad. It's not meaning that you're a good or bad hitter, right? But it's just who you are. So we try to gamify our development and our recruiting process and streamline those things at the same rate. So those three indicators really are swing decisions, contact, and contact quality. And I think every professional team, has their iteration of those three items. But we're trying to take those things too, and we're evaluating and also developing. So the conversations in the spring with our guys are going to be around, be who you are. So if you're somebody that's in the 90th percentile in swing decisions, meaning you're in the top 10% of guys that make swing decisions, we want you to go do that. Like, don't try to reinvent yourself and be somebody that you're not. And I think that's where we have some similar resources to what the professional game has and True Media and TrackMan data, where we can collect a lot of that and we take that information and we can put it in a percentile form like that so we can measure our guys to not just all of Division One or all of college baseball, but specifically where we want to go playing in the postseason or regional, super regional. So we'll bucket our guys and give them feedback on, you're in the 90th percentile in swing decisions compared to the Sun Belt Conference in the Big 12 and the ACC and the SEC, right? So those are the guys we're wanting to play against in June. So, yeah, it's swing decisions, contact. We had a freshman in our program last year who, looking at his stuff before meeting him, doing some homework, he was in the 99th percentile in swing decisions. He was in the 98th percentile in contact, and he's in the 20th percentile in contact quality. So that's one where you could look at, it's pretty straightforward what needs to develop. It's the power, but I think that's where the art of coaching comes in. And if you go chase that, maybe you're taking away from his strengths a little bit and controlling the strike zone, putting the ball in play. So I think some of the conversations with him have been, we don't need to take you from the 20th percentile to the 100th. It's just marginal gains that we can make along the way. And maybe some predictable counts. Maybe it's what you just think, oh. Maybe it's what you do after you've got your first hit the second time through. There's so many situations you can think of where over the course of a year, maybe it's 15 at bats that take you to that next level. So I think it really just starts with being self-aware of who you are as a hitter. And we're going to ask our guys to really lean into their strengths and try to individualize it in that way to where their training is maximizing what they do well and at the same time challenging, the areas where they can continue to grow to be a complete hitter.
You said something very interesting there. You said 15 at bats, and I think that's something that I think is lost on so many people of just like how few at bats if you don't give up at bats, like how big of a difference that can make over the course of a season. Like you said, just 15 at bats in the college game, that's huge. That could be massive. But I think it's one of the things that it's like we're in this like more type of mentality at times where we don't think of like the small stuff because we're always focused on the big stuff that we lose sight of that. I always go back to Pete Rose used to always say, don't be afraid to take the last cookie in the cookie jar, in the sense of like, hey, if you're 0 for 3, like go get that fourth at bat, like that could be huge right there. That's 1 for 4. You know what I mean? Like don't give up just because you start out 0 for 3. Or on the flip side, you're 3 for 3. Don't pack it in for the day. Like be greedy, go get that last cookie and go 4 for 4. And I think that little stuff like that. One of the things, Danny, is I'm somebody I like doing a lot of different stuff. I like doing the podcast and newsletter and content, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun. One of the things that at least I'm telling myself is like do less better. You know what I mean? Do less better. And so instead of trying to do a million things, like just do a few, but be really good at them. And you saying that right there of the 15 at bats. Just kind of ignited a fire in me because it's just a good reminder of every single at bat, it makes a big difference over the long haul.
No doubt. And I think that's a nugget that you can give a player that's simple and to the point, that's actionable. They can go do something with it. And I think, back to the question you asked earlier of learning from those major league players, that's what they want. They don't want you to give them the whole spiel of how to do it or where it comes from or, how every pitch flies. Just give me what I can take into the box with me right now that I can go collect my hit or help us win, get that run in. So, I outline kind of our indicators and things that we talk about in our coaches room. But to a player, we're trying to give them one line, one thing to go help them win their at bat. Because, like you said, a few make a difference in your entire season, especially with the sample being smaller in our college game.
You guys have a camp coming up middle of January, I believe. And I bring that up because we're talking hitting, your hitting coach, and from, you mentioned just the things that are important to you right there from a hitting standpoint. How do you go about evaluating that in a high school hitter or at a camp in a camp setting? Is it Well, actually, I'm not even going to say. I don't want to give off anything to give you any ideas or anything like that. But like, I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
Sure. I mean, we're going to do a pro style workout, and there's going to be some game like at bats in there too, where we can try to get a lot in quickly. And I think you can get a snapshot of some of the raw tools, right? Like the bat to ball ability. Can you hit it to all fields? Can you hit for power, right? But then you're also in person having conversations with players too, and we try to really pick the brains of who we have on campus and get an idea of how they think and how they process and constantly taking notes so that we can then go into the spring and watch game like at bats. I don't think we're gonna see a player for the first time at camp and offer him right there. I hope we do because that means he's driving balls, into the river on campus and really putting on an elite performance that's just undeniable. But even at that point, you probably don't feel great about it. You want to make sure that it's not too good to be true, and you want to dig in and do more research and talk to people in their area that have seen him play, and all those things. But as far as what to look for, I think you're trying to see if the ingredients are there in terms of tools. I think you're trying to look at, I know I am looking at the swing, some of those pieces, like I alluded to earlier with our players when I was doing background work on just the alignment, the posture, the bat path. Like if you can check some of those boxes, or even if you can't, but look at an area and think, can we clean this up in a quick manner, or is this going to be a more long-term play if this player is in our program in a year? I think we're constantly taking note and weighing those things out and having conversations in the office about that. And I think just transparently in the portal era, the NIL era, even with the draft being shortened, development, it's kind of in a microwave right now. Guys are getting to the big leagues faster than they ever have. For us, a player, we've been lucky that people love coming to school here, and don't necessarily want to leave, but I'm sure we'll run into it one day where we have a freshman All-American and he's got that choice, right? And ultimately we're trying to move the needle as quickly as possible without skipping steps. So I think the identifying piece is really important, and that's what camp's all about.
Yeah, do you feel like you have to re-recruit players who are already in your program because of the transfer portal?
You
Like,
know,
do
I
you
haven't
feel like,
really
go ahead.
I haven't really got to experience it full force yet. Um, but I would say, the players that are in our program really enjoy being here. They've gelled well. What I've heard over the summer, it's more about like what can I do to stay at Texas State and less about, how do I go somewhere else. Maybe that's different other places, but I think we've been blessed in that regard so far.
Parents, are you tired of spending money going to different camps and showcases and not even knowing if the coach even is looking for your son's position or heck even knows his name? One of the things that I provide in my recruiting service is I reach out to college coaches before any of my players attends to one of their camps to, one, make sure that they're actually looking for their position, and then two, to see if there's actually interest on their behalf for that player. If you're interested in having something like this for you and your son, hit the link below, sign up for a free 15-minute consultation with me, and let's see if we're going to be a good fit to work together. All right, back to the podcast. I mean, I'll give my own take on the transfer portal, and you see kids who maybe they go to a mid-major and tear it up and then immediately transfer to a Power Four school or whatever. To me, I've seen that work actually on both ends. I've seen it work out well, and then I've actually seen it work out not well on the other end. And so I always like tell players is like, what's the end goal for you? And a lot of times the end goal is like make it to the major leagues. It's like, okay, great. Well, I can promise you right now, if you go look back at the draft or the last 10 years, look at where a lot of these guys who are drafted from in even the first round. Like when I was with the Orioles, we got Colton Cowser out of Sam Houston State. And I told Colton, I was like, if Houston wasn't in that name, I wouldn't have a clue where that school's at. You know what I mean? And so I think that's something too, where it's like you need to go and play. And if you play and you put up numbers, everything else just takes care of itself. It really does. So I just don't think chasing that logo, brand, all that stuff. And then also from an NIL standpoint, from a money standpoint, again, if you're that good, that's going to be chump change, compared to what you're going to get in the major leagues. I hope I'm not like old man yelling at clouds here type of a thing, but that's just I just see that all the time, and it kind of just it drives me crazy because I just feel like a lot of times we're doing it for the wrong, not necessarily the wrong reasons. It's just we're letting short-term gratification dictate long-term plans.
No doubt. It's funny you say that. We were in the office the other day doing a deep dive on recent drafts and players on major league rosters and where they came from. And yeah, I'm not here to say that the SEC is a bad league. I think we all know it's a really good league. But it was an interesting tidbit that if you're looking at 40-man rosters right now in the big leagues, and guys that have a year of service time, there's 89 players currently that are from the SEC, and only 35 of those are hitters, right? And only 11 of those 35 SEC hitters have more than 2 years of service time. And that's including the two schools that got added to the SEC. Now, does that change in the future? Sure. The draft's shorter. There's more college players being drafted now more than ever. But I think to what you're saying, it goes to show that hitters come in all shapes and forms and from different places and different levels that aren't even Division One. So I think if you're a hitter out there looking to develop, like that's something that, I at least would take a lot of stock into, is looking for a program that has a system that they can show me to develop me as a hitter, but a place where I can also compete and play and put up the things I need to put up in order to have those opportunities.
Yeah, you just said the two things. Like in order to develop, like you need somebody who obviously knows how to develop, somebody like yourself, develop hitters, but you have to play. Like you cannot replicate in-game at bats in a cage, like that in-game anxiety, like all those different things that happen in game that you learn, and your brain is being able to just pick up all those different pitch shapes time and time again. Like you have to have that. And I know earlier I asked, if someone was going to go play at Texas State versus somewhere else, why would they go and play for Texas State? And I think that I'll help you out on this, Danny, because I think you're a humble guy. You're a very humble guy. I'll be honest, if I had the chance to play for somebody like yourself with the experience that you have, because if I'm a high school player, where do I want to go play at? I want to go play for somebody who's already worked with the best hitters in the world. I want to go play for somebody who's like already shared the dugout with the best hitters in the world and has already helped develop the best hitters in the world, because that's where I want to get to. And so I think somebody like yourself who's already done that, you already have such a massive, I would say, edge over a lot of other coaches. Not to say that other coaches aren't good, but it's just like you can't replicate that type of experience of knowing what works and what doesn't work. Because I think that's a lot of times from a hitting standpoint, you waste so much time doing things that you think you might work. But if you have somebody who's already been down that road, be like, this is a waste of our time. Let's focus on this, because you only have so much time and energy. You just do. You only have so much. And so somebody like yourself, I mean, no brainer, I think, in order to go and play for somebody who has that experience already.
Well, I
So, well,
appreciate you saying that.
yeah.
And I think a piece to pull out of that too is, I don't have all the answers, but, just watching the best in the world around some of the best coaches too. Those guys are so quick, if it's not working, to bag it and try something else or try a variation of the same concept. So I think a lot of times those guys fall in love, younger players, I mean, fall in love with drills. I think at the higher levels, it's more concepts over drills. Like if I'm trying to keep my hands inside, well, there's 100 different drills you can do to keep your hands inside, right? And, being in that situation, I was fortunate to be exposed to a lot of those different ways, but also the idea that, if the coach doesn't know the answer, you can pick up the phone and call somebody that's been through the same thing. So I can tell you right now, I'm thinking of two hitters we have that conversations over the winter break, they're talking about some bat path things. And the way they're saying it, I haven't really thought about it before, but I can pick up the phone and I can call Christian Vasquez and
Mm.
just talk about it on FaceTime, and he's in the cage working right now, and maybe he has thought about it that way because he's been in the box more than I have, and in some different environments, and he may have a way to say it that lands with our player better than I have right now. So I appreciate you saying all that, but I think it's a constant pursuit too of just a better way, a different way, ultimately the way that just lands and gets the player to perform, right? Because we can know it all in theory, but it's all just really about what we can get our players to do to go win.
That's good stuff. Danny, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. It's been a ton of fun. I'm gonna have to get down there to watch a game at some point this season. I got to get down that way anyway, so that'll be a ton of fun. Is there anything else you want to add to the episode? Anything else you want to say about yourself, about Texas State and the program? If so, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity there. I think, I'm a younger coach in the game. Being in the college game now, I'm excited to share some of the experiences I've had, a short professional career, short college career. But if you're a young coach out there, I just challenge you, like, don't be afraid to be the youngest guy, the greenest guy, the least experienced one in the room. The old adage of you become the average of the five people you spend the most time around. I got really lucky to spend time around good people, and I think today I'm a product of some of those people, and I'm going to look to continue to do that myself. So to coaches out there, I just challenge yourself to do that, seek it out. Don't look for old school, new school. Just look for what's going to work, right? So I'd leave it with that.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks, Patrick. Appreciate it.